Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. In this Nur al-Quran reflection series, we try to develop a connection with the Quran through both understanding and memorization. And in part A of each lesson, we will go over the translation of the verses and some of the lessons and reflections. We'll try to develop a visual memory that will help us with memorization, and we'll go over the unique and similar verses that can get confusing when you're memorizing, and you'll find all of these listed in the PDF file in the description below. And in part B, we'll go over the rest of the items on this list, inshallah. So in this lesson, we will go over quarter number 4 of Surat An-Nissaa, which is the 34th quarter of the Quran. And that starts with أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. And this is ayah number 36 of Surat An-Nissaa. Alright, so this is a long quarter, and you will see that it starts on the left-hand side. We only have 2 verses here on the left-hand side, and then you are going to have 2 more full pages, 2 opposite pages. Each has 7 verses, so we'll see that they're kind of shorter verses on these pages here, and so sometimes they get confusing when you're memorizing. And then the quarter ends here on the right-hand side, so we have 6 verses here before the following quarter starts, and the following quarter starts with إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تُؤَدُّوا الْأَمَانَاتِ. And so if we think about the topics here, so ayah number 36 is actually related to the previous quarter, so it's a continuation of giving people their rights. So وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا, worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and do not associate any partners with Him. And then the following section talks about social relations. You will see that it talks about stinginess, about giving, about spending. And so this part here talks about social relations until ayah number 42. And then we'll have one ayah that talks about prayer. So this one is just a single ayah that talks about one topic. And then the rest of the quarter talks about the people of the scripture. So we'll discuss that in detail, inshallah, since there's a lot of verses that talk about that topic, inshallah. Okay, so let's start with the translation, inshallah. So this ayah here, ayah number 36, it could be called the ayah of Huquq, or the ayah of rights. And we will see that there are 10 types or 10 categories, or 10, there's a list of 10, not people necessarily, because the first one is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but those are the ones that we should give rights to. We have rights that are owed to these. So let's read that together, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Worship Allah and associate nothing with Him. وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, that's number 2. And to parents do good. وَبِذِي الْقُرْبَى, that's number 3. And to relatives. وَالْيَتَامَى, orphans. وَالْمَسَاكِينَ, the needy. وَالْجَارِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى, and the near neighbor. وَالْجَارِ الْجُنُبِ, the neighbor further away. وَالصَّاحِبِ بِالْجَنْبِ, the companion at your side. وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ, the traveler. وَمَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ, and those whom your right hands possess. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ مَنْ كَانَ مُخْتَالًا فَخُورًا, indeed Allah does not like those who are self-deluding and boastful. And so we will see that وَبِذِي الْقُرْبَى, there is a unique part here, and that's the first unique ayah here of this quarter. In that we have a ba with dhil qurba. So that's the only one in the Quran that has wa bi dhil qurba. It's not wa dhil qurba. And it gets confusing because it's similar to ayah number 83 of Surah Al-Baqarah, and similar to other ayahs of the Quran as well. But just remember that this one here in Surah An-Nissaa is the only one that has the ba letter, wa bi dhil qurba. And so here مختالا فخورا, so إن الله لا يحب من كان مختالا فخورا, this is also unique. So in other surahs it's كل مختال فخور, but here it's من كان مختالا فخورا. That's what is an exception here, what is unique here to Surah An-Nissaa. And you will see that mukhtal means someone who's boastful and arrogant in actions, someone who actually tries to be arrogant and shows boastfulness in the way they conduct themselves in their actions. But fakhur is someone who's boastful with words, someone who's arrogant and proud with words, someone who's boastful. And so those two things usually come together. And usually when someone is living a boastful and arrogant life, they're also self-centered and they do not care about other people. And this makes them stingy. It makes them not willing to share what they have or to give others or to give from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to them. And so we see that the next ayah talks about that. It talks about a group of people who are stingy and enjoin upon other people's stinginess and conceal what Allah has given them of His bounty. So they conceal that so they wouldn't have to give from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them. And we have prepared for the disbelievers a humiliating punishment. And we see that the punishment usually in the Quran, it fits the sin. So those people are arrogant, they're boastful, and so what comes with that, what is associated with that, is a punishment that is humiliating, that is muhina. So adab muhina, that's because they are arrogant. And we've seen that with Surat Al-Baqarah and Surat Al-Imran, when arrogance is mentioned, when people are too arrogant to admit the truth, for example, or something that has that meaning, that's when you have the word muhin or the word humiliating with the punishment. So Alladina, this is the first ayah of 4 in Surat An-Nissaa that starts with the word Alladina, and Adab Muhina, this is also the first time of 3. So you'll have 2 more repetitions of that ending in Surat An-Nissaa. Okay. The next page, وَالَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ أَمْوَالَهُمْ رِئَاءَ النَّاسِ. And here we also have وَالَّذِينَ 4 times. That's the beginning of an ayah, and that's the first time of 4. So وَالَّذِينَ with a waw, that's also 4 times. And also those who spend of their wealth to be seen by the people. So رِئَاءَ النَّاسِ means to be seen. They're not doing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're doing it to be seen by the people. And so we see that the ayahs of infaq, they were mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah. So if we look at them, there's a few ayahs, so we'll see that in the PDF file. So the word infaq or yunfiquna, there's many similarities with that in Surah Al-Baqarah, but then this one here is in Surah An-Nissaa. So usually the similarities, they're not here in Surah An-Nissaa, they're mostly in Surah Al-Baqarah. And so we started to talk about the description of these people. So we'll see that the first, these 2 ayahs, ayahs 37, 38, they talk about the description of these people. And then the consequence of their actions is mentioned here in the following ayahs, ayahs 40 to 42. And then 43 is when we talk about prayer. So that's an ayah with a separate topic, inshallah. Okay, so وَلَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَلَا بِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. So usually this gets confusing when you're memorizing. Why is it وَبِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ or وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَلَا بِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ? How do we remember if it's وَلَا بِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ or وَبِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ? So let's look at these. So we have one that is unique in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah number 8. Remember we talked about that in Surah Al-Baqarah. It's mentioned in the affirmative form. There's no la, and it has the letter ba. So billahi wa bil yawmil akhir. So it has ba in both. Wa bil yawmil akhir. And that's unique. That's only once in the whole Quran, and it's in ayah number 8 of Surah Al-Baqarah. And then the one that is billahi wala bil yawmil akhir, this is mentioned in the negative form, and it has the letter ba. And that's twice in the Quran. One is here in Surah An-Nissaa, ayah number 38, and once in Surah At-Tawbah, ayah number 29. And then billahi wal yawmil akhir, that's the affirmative form, no ba, and that is 19 times of the Quran. So how do we remember? What does it mean to have billahi wala bil yawmil akhir? Usually that comes with the hypocrites. And the reason is, if someone is a disbeliever, they actually admit that. They say, I do not believe in God, and I do not believe in the last day, the day of judgment, right? So they do not believe in this and this, right? But if someone is a hypocrite, what they're actually saying is that we believe in God and we believe in the last day, but what the Quran is revealing about them is that they don't believe in either. They don't believe in either God or the last day. So wala means neither. So it means they neither believe in this nor that. So that's because it's revealing what those people are actually concealing. They're saying we believe in this and that, but they don't believe in either of those. And so there you have billahi wala bil yawm al-akhir with the hypocrites, but billahi wal yawm al-akhir, that's just mentioned as a matter of fact. As the disbelievers say, or they admit they don't believe, and they actually don't believe. So there's no neither either. It's not that they're saying something and hiding something. So that's why you have billahi wal yawmil akhir. So that's now easy to remember, inshallah, that we have billahi wala bil yawmil akhir in Surat An-Nissaa and Surat At-Tawbah. So back to the ayahs, وَمَنْ يَكُنِ الشَّيْطَانُ لَهُ قَرِينًا, and he to whom shaitan is a companion, then evil is he as a companion. وَمَاذَا عَلَيْهِمْ لَوْ آمَنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ, and what harm would come upon them if they believed in Allah and the last day. وَأَنْفَقُوا مِمَّا رَزَقَهُمُ اللَّهُ, and spent out of what Allah provided for them. وَكَانَ اللَّهُ بِهِمْ عَلِيمًا, Allah is ever about them knowing. So that's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reproaching them. He's blaming them here in this ayah. So first we had a description of these people, and then a reproach here, and then إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَظْلِمُ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ, that Allah does not do injustice. He does not do any injustice, not even as much as an atom's weight. So مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ is an atom's weight. While if there is a good deed, He multiplies it and gives from Himself a great reward. وَإِن تَكُ حَسَنَةً يُضَاعِفْهَا وَيُؤْتِ مِن لَدُنْهُ أَجْرًا عَظِيمًا. So إِنَّ Allah, as the beginning of an ayah, is mentioned 4 times in Surat An-Nissaa. And so we will have here إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَظْلِمُ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ, and then there will be twice إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْفِرُ أَن يُشْرَكَ بِهِ وَيَغْفِرُ مَا دُونَ ذَلِكَ لِمَن يَشَاءُ. So those two are similar. There's 2 ayahs that are identical in the first part at least. And then إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تُؤَدُّوا الْأَمَانَاتِ إِلَى أَهْلِهَا, and that's the beginning of the next quarter. So that's all 4 times of إِنَّ اللَّهَ. فَكَيْفَ إِذَا جِئْنَا مِنْ كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ بِشَهِيدٍ. So that's the consequence here, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not do them injustice, and that in the end there will be a day of judgment where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to bring from every nation a witness, and we bring you, O Muhammad, against these people as a witness. وَجِئْنَا بِكَ عَلَى هَؤُلَاءِ شَهِيدًا. And that ayah is similar to ayah number 89 of Surat An-Nahl. And the Prophet ﷺ, when he heard this ayah, he wept. When he envisioned that day of judgment, when he is going to be a witness over these people. فَكَيْفَ إِذَا, that's also the first time of 2 here in Surat An-Nissaa. يَوْمَئِذٍ يَوَدُّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا وَعَصَوْا الرَّسُولَ. That day, those who disbelieved and disobeyed the messenger will wish they could be covered by the earth, and they will not conceal from Allah a single statement. لَوْ تُسَوَّى بِهِمُ الْأَرْضُ وَلَا يَكْتُمُونَ اللَّهَ حَدِيثًا. And they will not conceal from Allah a single statement. Okay, the next ayah number 43, that's the ayah that talks about prayer. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, and that's the 3rd time of 9, and we talked about all the mentionings of يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا in the last quarter. لا تقربوا الصلاة وأنتم سكارى. Do not approach prayer while you are intoxicated. حتى تعلموا ما تقولون. Until you know what you are saying. So this here is, we can talk about the different stages of alcohol prohibition. So we will see that in Surat An-Nahl this was revealed first. ومن ثمرات النخيل والأعناب تتخذون منه سكرا ورزقا حسنا. You take intoxicant and good provision. And so this is here mentioned as a matter of fact, that people take intoxicants, that people take sakar. It is not mentioned as something to be prohibited. And then the next stage is when that was mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْسِرِ. They ask you about wine and gambling. Say in them is great sin, and yet some benefit for people, but their sin is greater than their benefit. So it's just mentioned that their sin is greater than their benefit, and that's Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah number 219. And then this one here in Surat An-Nissaa, لا تقربوا الصلاة وأنتم سكارى. Do not approach prayer while you are intoxicated, until you know what you are saying. And then the final one, يا أيها الذين آمنوا إنما الخمر والميسر والأنصاب والأزلام رجس من عمل الشيطان فاجتنبوه لعلكم تفلحون. And that's in Surah Al-Ma'idah, ayah number 90. So it says that, O you who have believed, indeed intoxicants, gambling, sacrificing on stone altars to other than Allah, and divining arrows are but defilement from the work of shaitan, so avoid it that you may be successful. So we can see here that this one in Surah An-Nissaa, that's number 3, or the 3rd stage of alcohol prohibition, before it finally became permanently prohibited. Okay. So لا تقربوا الصلاة وأنتم سكارى. So do not approach prayer while you are intoxicated. And also, do not approach prayer in a state of janaba, or in a state of janaba, except those passing through a place of prayer until you have washed your whole body. وَإِن كُنتُم مَرْضَى أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ. And if you are ill or on a journey, or one of you comes from the place of relieving himself, or you have contacted women, which is had sexual intercourse, and find no water, then seek clean earth and wipe over your faces and your hands with it. Indeed, Allah is ever pardoning and forgiving. فَامْسَحُوا بِوُجُوهِكُمْ وَأَيْدِيكُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَفُوًّا غَفُورًا. And عَفُوًّا غَفُورًا is the third unique ayah here. And you will see عَفُوًّا غَفُورًا only mentioned in Surat An-Nissaa. It's mentioned twice in Surat An-Nissaa. This is one of them, but it's unique to Surat An-Nissaa. And other surahs, it's we don't have those two names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala together. Okay, and then that's the beginning of a new topic. أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا نَصِيبًا مِنَ الْكِتَابِ. And we will see that this is mentioned twice. أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا نَصِيبًا مِنَ الْكِتَابِ. And both of them are on opposite pages. So one is on the bottom of this page, page number 85. And the other one is on the bottom of page number 86. So two opposite pages, you have the exact same beginning of an ayah, right? And then Alam Tara, it in itself is 5 times in Surah An-Nissaa as the beginning of an ayah. So here, this is the first time of 5 of Alam Tara, and first time of 2 of Alam Tara ila alladhina utu nasiban min al-kitab. Okay, يشترون الضلالة ويريدون أن تضلوا السبيل. That is similar to Ayah 51, Ayah 23 in Surah Al-Imran. And so here, have you not seen those who were given a portion of the scripture? So here we talk about the people of the scripture, the Jews and Christians, but specifically Jews. So they have been given a portion of the scripture, but they يشترون الضلالة, purchase error in exchange for it and wish you would lose the way. So some people, a group of those Jews, they purchase error, they knowingly reject the Quran and the message of the Prophet ﷺ, even though they know that it is the truth from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they know it, but they deny it because they purchase error. They يشترون الضلالة. And they also want other people to lose the way as well. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to talk about those people here. So in the next ayah, وَاللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ بِأَعْدَائِكُمْ, and Allah is most knowing of your enemies, and sufficient is Allah as an ally, and sufficient is Allah as a helper. And so these ayahs were revealed in Medina. There were some Jews in Medina who were plotting against Muslims and against the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah is telling Muslims that He knows of their enemies and He will suffice Muslims. They do not need to be afraid. They should make tawakkul on Allah and seek His protection. وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ وَلِيًّا وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ نَصِيرًا. So here we have وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ نَصِيرًا. That ending وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ, we talked about it last time. So here in this quarter, we have the ending of نَصِيرًا. And so that's the second time of 8. وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ. Okay, مِنَ الَّذِينَ هَادُوا يُحَرِّفُونَ الْكَلِمَ عَمَّ مَوَاضِعِهِ. Among the Jews are those who distort words from their proper places, which means from their proper usages, and say, we hear and disobey. سَمِعْنَا وَعَصَيْنَا. وَاسْمَعْ غَيْرَ مُسْمَعٍ. And hear but be not heard. أَنْ رَاعِنَا. Twisting their tongues and defaming the religion. And so what happened here is that some of these Jews, and so here we have among the Jews, which means some of them. It doesn't mean every Jew. Just among those Jews in Medina, some of them did something. They would distort words to mean something that they are hiding inside of themselves. So for example, Muslims would say سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا. So we heard and we obeyed. And so what those people would say, they would say سَمِعْنَا, and under their breath they would say وَعَصَيْنَا, which means سَمِعْنَا وَعَصَيْنَا. So we heard, but we disobeyed. We are not listening to that. Or they would say wasma. So when they're telling the Prophet ﷺ wasma, which means listen or hear. But then they would under their breath say غير مسمع. غير مسمع means but be not heard, which means something like we wish you would not hear, or we wish you would not be heard. So something that is they're just trying to defame the Prophet ﷺ and trying to be impolite to the Prophet ﷺ and say things like that and distort the words. Or they would say ra'ina. Ra'ina is a word that could mean something like I beg your pardon, or something like that. But then they would say ra'ina. Ra'ina means our shepherd. And so they're trying to be impolite to the Prophet ﷺ and say that he's a shepherd. And they would say that under their breath, or say it in a way that isn't very clear, so that they would be insulting without actually having the courage to say it. And so sometimes they would say, instead of Assalamu alaikum or Assalamu alayka, peace be upon you, they would say Assalamu alayka, which is death be upon you. And so they twist their tongues and defame the religion and the Prophet ﷺ this way, by saying insulting things that way. And so the Quran is responding to those people here. The Quran says, and if they had said instead, we hear and obey, أنهم قالوا سمعنا وأطعنا واسمع وانظرنا, and wait for us to understand, it would have been better for them and more suitable. لكان خيرا لهم وأقوم. And وأقوم is also a unique ayah here. It's the only time we have وأقوم, not وأقوم. وأقوم is in the rest of the surahs with a dhamma, but here with the fatha, it's only here in Surat An-Nissaa. ولكن لعنهم الله بكفرهم فلا يؤمنون إلا قليلا. But Allah has cursed them for their disbelief, so they do not believe except for a few. يا أيها الذين أوتوا الكتاب, and that's also unique, and you will see in most of the Quran it's يا أهل الكتاب, but this is the only one in the whole Quran that says يا أيها الذين أوتوا الكتاب, and you can see that it's being said as a reproach, or as, oh, you who were given the scripture, so you have been given the scripture, so you should behave better, you should know better, you should not be saying those things, you should not be insulting, you should act like the scripture that you were given is telling you to be. And so, oh, you who were given the scripture, that's different from saying Ya Ahl al-Kitab. Ya Ahl al-Kitab means that they are companions of the scripture, that they're actually holding themselves up to the standards of the scripture, and that has been mentioned in most of the Quran. But this is the only time that it says Ya ayyuha alladhina utul kitab, oh, you who were given the scripture, believe in what we have sent down to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Aminu bima nazzalna. So ma nazzalna here is also unique. It's not anzalna, it's nazzalna. That's the only one. مصدقا لما معكم, confirming that which is with you. من قبل أن نطمس وجوها فنردها على أدبارها, before we obliterate faces and turn them toward their backs, or curse them, أو نلعنهم كما لعنا أصحاب السبت, as we cursed the Sabbath breakers. And we talked about the story of the Sabbath breakers in Surah Al-Baqarah, those people who were ordered not to work on the Sabbath on Saturdays, but then that's when they would have the fish. And so, and ever is the matter or the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accomplished. وَكَانَ أَمْرُ اللَّهِ مَفْعُولًا. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْفِرُ أَن يُشْرَكَ بِهِ. And that's again the second time of إِنَّ اللَّهَ as the beginning of an ayah in Surat An-Nissaa. We talked about this. And then we're going to have another one that is identical. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْفِرُ أَن يُشْرَكَ بِهِ وَيَغْفِرُ مَا دُونَ ذَلِكَ لِمَن يَشَاءُ. Indeed, Allah does not forgive association with Him, but He forgives what is less than that for whom He wills. وَمَن يُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ, and he who associates others with Allah, فَقَدْ افترى إثما عظيما, has certainly fabricated a tremendous sin. And so we will see that this here is, so إثما عظيما is unique. It's the only إثما عظيما in the Quran. In other surahs, it's إثما مبينا. So here it's إثما عظيما. And so we will see that this إن الله لا يغفر أن يشرك به ويغفر ما دون ذلك لمن يشاء ومن يشرك بالله. Here the context is talking about the people of the scripture, the Jews, right? And so those people, they know, they already have scripture, they already know. And those people who rejected the Prophet ﷺ, among them, they knew that he was a messenger. And so because they have associated something with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala while knowing, then here it says فَقَدْ افترى إثما عظيما, certainly fabricated a tremendous sin. They fabricated something because they know. But when the other similar ayah will be mentioned, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْفِرُ أَن يُشْرَكَ بِهِ وَيَغْفِرُ مَا دُونَ ذَلِكَ لِمَن يَشَاءُ وَمَن يُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ فَقَدْ ضَلَّ ضَلَالًا بَعِيدًا. And so we will see that in that other context, what is being discussed is those who are disbelievers. They're not people of the scripture. They have not been given scripture before. And so they are astray. ضَلَّ ضَلَالًا بَعِيدًا means they have completely gone astray. And so the context here matters. And usually those two get confusing. So just remember that the context here is the people of the scripture. أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى الَّذِينَ يُزَكُّونَ أَنفُسَهُم. Have you not seen those who claim themselves to be pure? Rather, Allah purifies whom He wills, and injustice is not done to them, even as much as a thread inside a date seed. أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى. So أَلَمْ تَرَ, that's the second time of 5 here in Surat An-Nissaa. And so this is an important concept that is repeated many times in the Quran. Some people claim themselves to be pure. Some of the people of the scripture would say that they are the children of God, that heaven is for them and exclusively for them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, do not claim yourself to be pure. It is Allah who knows what is in people's hearts. He knows who is pure and who isn't. By what authority do people make such claims that they are chosen by God or that they are going to heaven? They have no evidence, and this is inventing untruth about God. And so the next ayah, انظر كيف يفترون على الله الكذب. Look how they invent about Allah untruth, and sufficient is that as a manifest sin. وكفى به إثما مبينا. The next ayah, ألم تر إلى, again that's the third time of 5, and the second time of ألم تر إلى الذين أوتوا نصيبا من الكتاب, similar to the one on the opposite page. يؤمنون بالجبت والطاغوت. They believe in Jibt. Jibt is superstition, and طاغوت is false objects of worship. ويقولون للذين كفروا هؤلاء أهدى من الذين آمنوا سبيلا. And they say about the disbelievers, these are better guided than the believers as to the way. أولئك الذين لعنهم الله. Those are the ones whom Allah has cursed, and he whom Allah curses, never will you find for him a helper. So أولئك as the beginning of an ayah is the first time of 5 here. وَمَنْ يَلْعَنِ اللَّهُ فَلَنْ تَجِدَ لَهُ نَصِيرًا. So فَلَنْ تَجِدَ لَهُ نَصِيرًا, that is also unique here to Surat An-Nissaa. Or have they a share of dominion? Then if that were so, they would not give the people even as much as the speck on a date seed. أَمْ لَهُمْ نَصِيبٌ مِّنَ الْمُلْكِ فَإِذًا لَا يُؤْتُونَ النَّاسَ نَقِيرًا. So naqir is that speck or dot on a date seed. So just let's look at this. So we talked about fatil and we talked about naqir, and later inshallah in Surah Fatir we'll talk about qitmir. And so the difference is naqir is that speck or that dot on the date seed. That small speck or a small dot, like a really, really tiny thing. And a thread is the al-fatil is the thread inside the date seed. You see that there's this small, really fine thread in that date seed. That's the fatil. And the qitmir is the membrane on the date seed. And so they all mean something that is very tiny, that most people don't even pay attention to. But they in different ways, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expresses that. And so they're very stingy. They would not give people even the speck on a date seed. They would not even give people any like small amount. فَإِذًا لَا يُؤْتُونَ النَّاسَ نَقِيرًا. أَمْ يَحْسُدُونَ النَّاسَ. Or do they envy people for what Allah has given them of His bounty? So jealousy is what made some of the people of the scripture reject the message of the Prophet ﷺ, simply because he was not from their nation, that he was an Arab and not a Jew. So some people just hated him based on that. Jealousy is the opposite of faith. Faith makes you realize that all matters are up to Allah and that He alone can give to whomever He wills. But jealousy is thinking that you have a better way of doing things, that you would have distributed provision in a different way, that you could have done things better among people, that you would have given this to that, or you would have given that to yourself. You think you're more worthy of that thing. So jealousy can turn people away from the right path and lead them astray, as we can see here. So do they envy people for what Allah has given them of His bounty? But we had already given the family of Ibrahim the scripture and wisdom and conferred upon them a great kingdom. So that is something that is not new. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given that to Ibrahim alayhi salam before that and his family, the scripture and wisdom, and conferred upon them a great kingdom. وَأَتَيْنَاهُمْ مُلْكًا عَظِيمًا. فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ آمَنَ بِهِ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ صَدَّ عَنْهُ. And some among them believed in it, and some among them were averse to it. وَكَفَى بِجَهَنَّمَ سَعِيرًا. And sufficient is hell as a blaze. إن الذين, this is the second time of 7. إن الذين كفروا is the first time of 3 in Surat An-Nissaa, and we'll talk about that. إن الذين كفروا in the Quran. إن الذين كفروا بآياتنا سوف نصليهم نارا. Indeed, those who disbelieve in our verses, we will drive them into a fire. كلما نضجت جلودهم بدلناهم جلودا غيرها. Every time their skins are roasted through, we will replace them with other skins. ليذوقوا العذاب, so they may taste the punishment. إن الله كان عزيزا حكيما. Allah, indeed, Allah is ever exalted in might and wise. إن الله كان عزيزا حكيما, that is also unique to Surat An-Nissaa. And we will see that in other surahs it's وَكَانَ اللَّهُ عَزِيزًا حَكِيمًا. This is إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَزِيزًا حَكِيمًا. That's unique to this ayah here. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا is the beginning of an ayah, that's the first time of 4. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, that's the first time of 2, and we will see that it's very similar. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ سَنُدْخِلُهُم جَنَّاتٍ تَجْرِي مِن تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا أَبَدًا. Here it's لهم فيها أزواج مطهرة وندخلهم ظلا ظليلا. But those who believe and do righteous deeds, we will admit them to gardens beneath which rivers flow, wherein they abide forever. For them therein are purified spouses, and we will admit them to deepening shade. So let's look at some of these similarities, because this quarter is full of these similarities as we talked. So وَبِذِي الْقُرْبَى, we said that this ba is only here in Surah An-Nissaa. In other surahs, it's وَذِي الْقُرْبَى, like we had in Surah Al-Baqarah. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ مَنْ كَانَ مُخْتَالًا فَخُورًا. In other surahs, it's كُلَّ مُخْتَالٍ فَخُورٍ. عفوا غفورا, that's also unique, and we'll see another one. فأولئك عسى الله أن يعفو عنهم وكان الله عفوا غفورا. That's ayah number 99 of Surah An-Nissaa. وأقوم with a fatha, that's the only one. يا أيها الذين أوتوا الكتاب, that's different, that's the only يا أيها الذين أوتوا الكتاب. Other ones are يا أهل الكتاب. بما نزلنا, آمنوا بما نزلنا, it's not بما أنزلنا, this one is بما نزلنا, that's unique. إثما عظيما, that's the only one that is not إثما مبينا, it's إثما عظيما. فلن تجد له نصيرا, so in other surahs it's فلن تجد له سبيلا, that's the only فلن تجد له نصيرا. إن الله كان عزيزا حكيما, in other surahs is وكان الله عزيزا حكيما. And if we talk about similarities, إن الله, that is the beginning of 4 ayahs. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَظْلِمُ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْفِرُ أَن يُشْرَكَ بِهِ. Those 2 are here in this quarter. The beginning of the next quarter is إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ, and then we have another one إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْفِرُ, that is similar to number 2 here. We're going to have that in the quarter of لَا خَيْرَ فِي كَثِيرٍ مِّن نَجْوَاهُمْ. أَلَمْ تَرَى, that is the beginning of 5 ayahs. أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى, and number 1 and number 3 are similar, and they come on 2 opposite pages, and there's one in the middle, which is أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى الَّذِينَ يُزَكُّونَ أَنفُسَهُم, and later inshallah we're going to have 2 more. أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى الَّذِينَ يَزْعُمُونَ أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى الَّذِينَ قِيلَ لَهُمْ كُفُّوا أَيْدِيَكُمْ. وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ, we talked about وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ حَسِيبًا on the first quarter of the surah. This is the second one, وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ نَصِيرًا, so we have حَسِيبًا نَصِيرًا عَلِيمًا. And then shahida, wakilan, wakila, shahida, wakila. So the last ones here, the last 5, they have similarities, but the first 3 are kind of different. وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ حَسِيبًا وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ نَصِيرًا وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ عَلِيمًا. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا is mentioned 17 times in the Quran as the beginning of an ayah, and 1 time as the middle of an ayah in Surat Al-Imran. So we talked about إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا in ayah number 4 on the first page of Surat Al-Imran. And we talked about it in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah number 6 and ayah number 161. And then also the beginning of ayahs in Surah Al-Imran. And here in Surah An-Nissaa, that's 3 times. We talked about the first one here, which is ayah number 56. And we're going to have 2 more, inshallah. Azwaj mutahhara has been mentioned only 3 times in the Quran, purified spouses. And here it means, so here in Surah An-Nissaa, we have خالدين فيها أبدا لهم فيها أزواج مطهرة. But in Surah Al-Baqarah we also had ولهم فيها أزواج مطهرة, ayah number 25, and we had one in Surah Al-Imran, ayah number 15, and those are all أزواج مطهرة in the Quran. That's all 3 of them. والذين ينفقون, we talked about ينفقون here in Surah An-Nissaa, and there's so many other similarities, all of them here in Surah Al-Baqarah. مثل الذين ينفقون ومثل الذين ينفقون أموالهم بالليل والنهار الذين ينفقون في السراء والضراء. خالدين فيها أبدا. خالدين فيها means will abide therein, right? It does have the meaning of eternal, but abada just means like eternally. That's what abada means. So that is mentioned 11 times in the Quran with the word abada. 8 times with Jannah and 3 times with hellfire, as in like abiding in hellfire eternally. That's only 3 times, but 8 times in Jannah. And so here we have 3 of those in Surat An-Nissaa. Those 3, they have 2 about Jannah and 1 about hellfire. The 2 about Jannah, one of them is here, ayah number 57. سندخلهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها أبدا لهم فيها أزواج مطهرة. That's the ayah of أزواج مطهرة. And then we have another one that is very similar. So it's identical on the first part. And then we have وعد الله حقا ومن أصدق من الله قيلا. And that too has أبدا. And then on ayah number 169 we'll have إلا طريق جهنم خالدين فيها أبدا وكان ذلك على الله يسيرا. And don't forget part B of this lesson. جزاكم الله خيرا.